Guys, oh, good morning. Oh, guys, oh, I got my mic and I didn't realize it. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 18th annual conference here with Finance Malta. As you enter the room, I'd like to offer you a very, very warm welcome. I'm also going to encourage everybody that's chosen to sit at the back just to get up and move forward a little bit for three reasons now. First of all, because we'll be able to see you better in your very handsome crowd. Secondly, because people coming late to the conference will, of course, want to be filing to the back. And thirdly, because the first panel discussion, which I am hosting, is going to be extremely interactive. And anybody that sits at the back is going to be the first person that I pick on. So if you do have the opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, just take a moment and come There's a massive crowd over here. This was the same as yesterday. I feel like there's some happy aura happening over here in the corner. I've got to investigate later on. But if you do have the opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, just up one and come forward, because I will be picking on people at the back in a few minutes. We're going to get underway in a few minutes, but please do come in, take your seats and get comfortable. Welcome to the 18th annual conference of Finance Malta. Welcome to day 2, and it is fantastic to see so many people here so early in the morning. My name is Trudy Kerr, and I'll be guiding you through today and everything that's happening. And I can tell you right now, we have an extremely exciting day ahead. Of course, we also have keynote speakers, we also have panel discussions, breakout sessions, and networking opportunities. And I say this at every conference that I have the honor of emceeing. Please, ladies and gentlemen, take the opportunity to meet and connect with as many people as you can today, because getting everyone together in the same place as we have the opportunity to do right now is a very unique opportunity. I always encourage everyone, go away with at least one valuable connection. So as a reminder, we're here to focus on sector performance, regulatory updates, growth priorities across banking, funds, fintech, and insurance. And I'm so glad that you are here because this is the must-attend forum for anyone shaping Malta's financial services agenda. And today we are picking up that conversation. Yesterday was absolutely outstanding. And I'm going to put my hands up and say, this is not my industry. But I sat there and I learnt yesterday because the conversation quality was just exceptional. Throughout the day, if you'd like to know what's coming up, you have a lanyard around your neck. And on the back of your lanyard, there is a QR code. And you can click onto that QR code, and that QR code is going to take you right to the app, and the app will give you all the information that you need to know. I, of course, am going to guide you through the day, and if there's anything else that you need to know, I will, of course, inform you. I'm going to start off by saying a massive thank you to our main sponsor, Kalamati Kushkiri, Moneybase, and all of the other sponsors that are on the sides here, because, of course, without them, none of this would be possible. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm extremely excited because it is my honor to host the very first panel discussion this morning. So I'd like to welcome my guests to the stage to come and join me here. And we're going to get underway with an expert panel titled Unlocking Growth Through Specialization. Ladies and gentlemen, please, a round of applause for my expert guests. So, whoever was here yesterday, was anyone here yesterday? Did they hear John? There's the last thing in the afternoon, and John said exactly what I'm about to tell you, and I've just mentioned this. This is not my area of specialization, but it hasn't stopped me from thoroughly enjoying all of the conversations we've had and being mindful of the fact that the health of the financial services industry is the health of Malta. Without a healthy industry, Malta just will not exist as it does today. So I'm going to, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to preempt this by saying this is going to be an extremely interactive panel discussion. And I have a gentleman over here, I do believe, with a roaming mic. And it's your work to make him get those steps in today, okay? I'm pretty sure he has a smartwatch on, and we're going to get him running around. If anybody has a comment or a question throughout this panel discussion, please just raise your hand. Do not be shy. This is a once in an annual year opportunity, and we want this man to get his steps in. So please just raise your hand, be brave, be the first person in a moment to put your hand up and ask a question. But before we do that, I'm going to ask my panelists to introduce themselves, and I'm really grateful that you're here. So starting with yourself.
Good morning. I'm Michael Schwierup. I'm an advisor at the MFSA, mainly focusing on strategy, policy, and innovation.
Fabulous.
Hi, I'm Charlotte Crosswell. I sit on boards of fintech companies, but also previously ran and chaired the open banking entity in the UK, the fintech industry body, and set up a non-profit public-private partnership for government with the Treasury and fintech.
Wonderful. And thank you for coming all this way. You came here for this panel discussion.
And the weather.
And the weather, yes. I have to say it's better today than it was yesterday. Yes, sir.
Hi, Luigi Gabriele. I'm managing partner at Camera Preziosi Advocates.
And you?
I'm Mike Wardle. I'm CEO of the ZN Group in London, a commercial think tank. And my specialist area of research is financial centre development.
Brilliant. So we have a VIP expert panel. I'm just going to reiterate, if you have a question or a comment, or you agree or you don't agree, please just raise your hand. I'm going to prep this gentleman over here, he's not looking at me, to stand up and head out that way, ready with the roaming mic. There we go. He's sitting down. Now I'm going to get his steps. You've got to get steps in. Right, let's start off with the first question. Malta's financial services sector has evolved across multiple fronts, from fintech and capital markets to insurance and asset management. In your view, where does specialism offer Malta's its strongest competitive advantage, and what would success in that area look like in 2030? Charlotte, you're looking at me, so I'm going to pick on you. Ladies first.
Well, I think if I look at it from the UK's perspective, we've been on similar journeys because we've been part of the EU, and despite UK not being part of the EU anymore, we're still on that journey of financial innovation. What can this bring to countries across Europe, and how do we deliver better outputs for consumers and small businesses. And so for me, that's everything. I think a lot of the time we talk about financial services of what the banks want to do and what the fintechs want to do. We've now got obviously digital assets and crypto, but actually it's got to focus on what does this actually do for the person in the street and what does it do for businesses and help them grow. And I think it's really important that we remember that. And what we've seen, obviously, is this huge journey over the last 20 years, particularly since the 2008 financial crisis, of how we focus on better outcomes. And so for me, that might mean getting a better credit score, maybe someone who's young, who's just starting on their journey, who wants to go on the housing ladder. And it may be a small business or an entrepreneur who wants to get finance. And so that's what we have to focus on. And everything that's happening within financial innovation is really there to support that. You now have choice. It's not just one bank that you stayed with since you're 16 years old. It's actually something that gives you many services and different varieties of that. And I think that's what's important when we look at any strategy. Yes, it's continuing to innovate, continuing to be entrepreneurial in spirit, and working between industry and regulators and government to bring that strategy together.
Brilliant. I mean, gentlemen, is there any thoughts on how that applies specifically to Malta as well? I mean, this is a great strategy.
No, obviously, I believe that the service to the public and consumers is a primary consideration, and if you marry that to certain areas that still need to grow, maybe more than they are at the moment, and if you look at, for example, capital markets, I think there's a lot to do also with helping startups through the various stages until they get to a stage where they can go on an MTF and grow. And in between, there are various stages, obviously, and we were talking yesterday about private equity, venture capital, which I think there's a lot of scope for, and especially venture capital funds at the moment to help multi-startups, but also other smaller investors who come from abroad to grow in Malta and to move up the ladder. Even sometimes they don't even perhaps realize that they've got that potential, and so we have to start from the very, very beginning and increase the awareness in that regard.
We specifically spoke about strongest competitive advantage that Malta has. I mean, are there any thoughts that you gentlemen would like to add to that?
Well, I think that the strongest competitive advantage Malta has, its ability to be nimble, its ability to be agile, to react to what's happening in the market in advance of other jurisdictions. And if you were asked me to say what I would see as success in 2030, I mean, I'm not a prophet, but I'll try. It's where Malta becomes the obvious choice for any operator who would like to come up with a product which combines traditional financial products with innovation and digital assets. And it's, I think, what we've tried to be in the past, which is basically everything to everyone. We now need to start focusing and being more disciplined and actually following and pursuing our vision in those areas where we can really be prime movers, where we can really be the first in the market, because we can be agile and nimble in developing to market developments.
Can I be a bit slightly devil's advocate for anybody that has an answer to this? But is that not what everybody says? Is that not every country says we're nimble, we have this advantage? Why Malta specifically?
Very simple. I think this is leveraging our size. The institutional and organizational setup and the focus that financial services mean to the country enable us to react much faster in changing regulation, in changing policy than other bigger jurisdictions. So it's really trying to leverage our size and organizational setup to the best possible, to the maximum.
Mike, thank you. And Mike, just to add to that, you come from an island, we're an island, I come from an island, and I've come to a smaller island. But is that really what you see as Malta's strongest competitive advantage?
Well, I think there's two things. I think island economies, and you could look at the Caribbean, you could look at the Channel Islands, do have that nimbleness because everyone knows each other. The regulators and the industry are very close, and they can move very quickly. But what I think is really key is saying, well, where is our real expertise? Because innovation comes from clustering expertise. And if you can find those niches, build up your human capital, get real expertise in those areas, innovation will come. So it really is choosing those areas of the business where you're going to make a difference. Digitalization could well be it. And saying we're going to be really good at that and innovation will flow.
Okay, I'm just going to ask if anybody has any thoughts on this. Or is everybody just warming up? I'll start picking on people just in case anybody doesn't put their hand up. Yes, there's a... What? Well, thank you, sir. Okay. I'm going to get this gentleman to run a little bit faster to you. Faster.
Yeah, he needs to get his step in. Hi, good morning. Peter Goetjes from IOPA, the European Occupational Pension and Insurance Authority. I'm listening with great interest. I just wanted to ask, because I think it was already touched upon, this human talent to get it in, because I think it's indeed correct that size can be an advantage, but it can also be a disadvantage. And I'm talking as a supervisor. Everybody knowing each other is sometimes a disadvantage when you have to act. So how do you make sure that you can manage with human talent that the innovation leads to better outcomes?
This is a brilliant question because we had a lot of discussion on the stage yesterday about size and how large is not always better. But this is a really important question because we're talking about human resources.
I mean, maybe I can come in here. One of the companies that I'm on the board of and I chair, we have 80 people around the world. We operate with sell our services into 4 central banks and regulators globally. We're completely virtual wherever we are. In fact, our main hub is Brazil, despite being UK headquartered. All our developers are in Brazil because we rolled out open finance for Central Bank of Brazil. And as a result of that, we've continued to hire across Europe, into Australia, into UAE, to the UK. So I think the one thing, and this was set up before COVID, but the one thing COVID's taught us is obviously that is available to everyone. And there's the challenges of being virtually spread and not being able to bring everyone together all the time. But when you set up a company like that, you can attract the talent from wherever you are. So I think we are sometimes going to have to be more innovative than just looking within what's within a few miles of the head office, and making sure that it is now a global opportunity to bring talent in from wherever. I mean, if you look at the west coast of the US, everyone used to be in San Francisco, and now what we've seen is everyone moving out of San Francisco and being anywhere but San Francisco because of taxes. So I think the opportunity is there, but you maybe just need to be more creative.
Yeah, could I just add? I think the important thing here is the dialogue that takes place between regulators, supervisors, and the market. And there's some really good examples across the world of where regulators have picked up the need to be in early discussion with the market about what's going on to make sure that regulation stays ahead and in touch with what's happening in the market. For digital assets and digital trading, Hong Kong is a really good example of where the regulator employed a whole lot of data scientists so they could really understand what was going on in the market and make sense of it and make sure the regulatory framework offered consumer protection whilst allowing innovation. So it's those kind of conversations which are really important. And in a small jurisdiction like this, those conversations can take place really naturally.
Can I just take a short pause before, just a second? Can I said this would be interactive. Does anybody in the room have concerns about manpower, about getting human resources, getting skilled staff in their industry? Is anybody else concerned about that? Or everybody is confident? There's a few people that are concerned about that. Yes.
I think this question is extremely important, and what we're actually trying to do under Joe's Amitabonus leadership is exactly that. So when you look at how practitioners in this industry spend their day, we spend our day running like headless chicken from one client demand to another. And therefore, strategy setting, strategic thinking doesn't actually come very natural to us. What MFSA see and what Kenneth Farrugia at MFSA constantly does, and testament to this is the discussion I just had this morning with him, is making sure that he keeps everyone on his toes. But George, are you saying this because you are interested in capital markets and therefore you think the capital markets is the most important thing? is it this what Malta really needs? So what we actually do through MFSAC is actually that kicking each other to ensure that we're focusing enough on the strategy setting and on the decision making that needs to be done for the interest of the. Is it easy with such a small size? No, it's not easy, but it's a question of focus. If we want to give enough time, I think then it doesn't become a question of numbers. Then it's just a question of whether we really want to do it or not. And that is how I believe we overcome the issue of size, by making sure that we focus.
Obviously, there's also the sort of productivity aspect, if I may, trying to push the added value of each and every employee up across the sector, so that we also meet, perhaps, and surpass EU averages in this regard. We're slightly below that, but I think there's a lot of scope for more specialization, even with the workforce that we have at the moment, adding value to the services that we already provide, and essentially grow the sector organically in that manner as well.
Anything else to add to that? Okay, in which case I'm going to come to Mike. I want to turn to you specifically for a second. Given your strategic policy background, where do you see the biggest opportunity for smart specialization, areas where Malta can lead without competing on scale?
Well, I think it's already happening in a way, because we do have a number of good fintechs already operating here. We started with electronic money and payment services, and these built up. Now we have CASPs, crypto service providers. There's a lot of synergy between the two sectors. We're already seeing it spill over into the investment services as well, so it's all converging in a way. And I think not just the regulation, but also the whole ecosystem is supporting that in a way. They find the technology service, they must find the talent, they do get expats as well to boost. There's a lot of, I guess, transfer of know-how across the board. So there's an anchor already which can only grow, my view. So,
any thoughts from the bigger island? No? Okay. Any thoughts on that from the floor? Okay, cool. All right, well, listen, thank you very much for that. Charlotte, I'm going to come to you, and I'm going to ask a question, because you are the perfect person to bring a wide view on this topic. What lessons from the UK and the EU experience in open finance could Malta apply to accelerating financial innovation safely?
All regulation's safe. But certainly the UK led the journey on open banking. This came out of PSD2, for those who know their acronyms. And the UK took that one step further, because we wanted to actually diversify away from concentration in banking. And then led the open banking journey. Why it was called open banking, I think we all question now, because everyone's adopted this term around the world, but certainly sometimes people get a bit confused on that. But what that's meant is that the UK has always been seen, back to specialization, as one of the thought leaders in open banking and moving on to open finance. So as we open up all of our data into all financial services, that's open finance, which the UK FCA put into their 5-year strategy in February this year. So I think we continue to try to lead the way. Lots of other countries have specialized. We're coming back to specialization. If you take Brazil, they have an explosion on innovation in payments. They've moved on open finance. Billions of APIs are going through, sharing that data, and incredible the progress. So I think there's a lot to be learned as we look at EU regulation of how developing countries have moved on some of these areas and really put them in at speed. In Europe, I think that doesn't happen quite as quickly. You are moving on sort of markets that have incumbents, and therefore you have to make it safe, and you have to bring that with you on the journey. But certainly the feeder regulation in EU, which will roll out in 2027, alone, is going to give us that base, and that's going to allow people and the fintechs to come in and help innovate across everyone's open finance journey. And that can be done safely because you have a trusted directory of where people have to register. It's not just open to everybody. And we're seeing that happen now across the EU. UK is probably moving a little bit quicker on that because we have seen the opportunities coming from that. So we've just got a new sandbox, a smart data accelerator at the UK FCA to test those ideas. But it's incredibly exciting, and I think, as I said, inspired by others around the world, what's happening in India, as I said, Brazil, Indonesia, Philippines, and other countries that have moved on payments. I think there's a lot to be learned, and we can now move at pace. So Feeder will drive that in Malta as well as across the EU, but real opportunity there to take a lead, I think.
I love hearing all of these positive conversations, and we talk about where Malta can exceed and where Malta can do really well, and Malta can be the best at this, and so on and so forth, and you've just mentioned about this. But I also think that we have to be honest and say what Malta shouldn't be doing, and also, in regards to open banking, the words of warning. You're the expert here, you have the knowledge. What are the words of warning that you would offer?
Words of warning?
Words of warning. Any areas that are not succeeding that we should be mindful of?
As I say to UK regulators, we have to be very careful not to try to do everything. Choose one area. So open finance means you open up everything. Nobody's going to move on that all at the same time. Choose one area and do it really well. So the UK is moving ahead with SME finance. We've decided that's the first area likely to exceed in. And also open energy. So how do you get more competitive with your energy suppliers? So there's areas you can do it, and once you've tested that, then you can move into other sectors rather than try to do everything at the same time. For anyone who works in digital assets, everyone knows that is a specialism for Malta. There are opportunities there. So I think it's about doing one thing really well and moving to something adjacent and moving on and on from there. And that's where the opportunity is.
I'm going to ask you, is that something that we're mindful of in Malta? Is that something that we keep in our strategies?
I think we're becoming certainly more sensitive to that over the last few years. I think, as I said in my previous intervention, there was a time when we tried to be everything to everyone. I think there is much more focus today, and that the incline we try to achieve is one which is more gradual, but also steadier. I think there is a lot of more focus on looking at niches which can then add value and allowing you to move on gradually to other areas gradually.
Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
I think that the whole question of, where does digital finance fit in the world is, yes, it helps to do things in developed markets better and more efficiently. But I think, as we've heard, there are markets which are emerging markets where people are underserviced by financial services, where digital services can open up markets to people who are unbanked or don't have access to loan finance, don't have access to insurance. And being really good in this space, in partnership with some of those emerging markets, I think is a real opportunity which isn't yet being exploited particularly well. So there's an opportunity. I can only leave that with you.
Does anybody have any comments or questions from the floor here? We have a question over here. Thank you very much indeed.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Malta from Swissquote. From your perspective, how is Malta differentiating itself from other EU jurisdictions that are also competing for niche financial services sectors?
Not an easy question, but there's a lot of competition out there, and we try to do what we think we can do best. So if you look at family offices, for example, we're sort of, in a way, not new to the market because they already exist here, but the new legislation and the new regulation that we brought in was focused on particular areas, on the convergence of family offices with the investment service sector. So it's always narrowing down, no matter how narrow already that niche appears to be, but you always need to drill down and find your competitive edge, essentially.
If I may, I think we need to look at differentiation in different ways. Differentiation doesn't necessarily mean a different market or a different sector of the industry. It also means differentiation in the way you manage or deal with a particular industry, with the way you evolve. You can be different to others. And I think differentiation is something that is evolving all the time. So yes, you need to be on your toes to be different and to fill the spaces. And this is why I believe Malta's agility can allow us to react to market developments faster and therefore be different in areas, not necessarily in different market segments, but in how we deal with issues in those markets.
Mike and Charlotte, do you have anything to add to the question?
I think you don't always need to differentiate. You have to, as I said, you do something really well, and you do something that's actually needed. I keep talking, a lot of people have tried to find solutions when there isn't really a problem, and so I think you've got to look at where are the issues that are sticking, and what do we need to do about it. I mean, initiative that just got announced 2 weeks ago in the UK was helping to digitise the property market. Now, anyone who's ever tried to buy a house in the UK will know just how difficult that is, the whole journey, from the actual information about the house to then going to get a secure mortgage, etc. And so that's the one that's now going to be tested over the next few months, is how do we find that? That's quite a small thing, but imagine the impact that can have. So I think it's about sort of choosing something and then really finding the end result, rather than say I want to compete with a different island or a different market. It's just, as I said, find where the challenges are first and solve those, and then go on to the new things.
What a great answer. I have the questions are fantastic from the floor. Does anybody else have a question or a comment? We have a gentleman with a hand up just here. Thank you so much.
Hi, Chris Kamanzuli, Dominion. We talk a lot about the industry and the regulators speaking together and moving fast to the market with innovative ideas. That's good. But on the same table, why don't we put in the university, for example? We talk about not having enough people to cater for the new industries we go into. Why don't we talk and also make sure that the children that are coming up are educated in the right sectors that we need for the country? I mean, being such a small country,
I think that's a very important point.
We don't want to be everything for everyone anymore. Yet, they need to be given an incentive, because the truth is, the more you specialize, the more you're stuck in such a small country. You either leave then, if you don't have that growth opportunity. So this really needs to be addressed. If not, we're going to keep on going around in circles.
Oh, you're very, very right. What we need to be more is perhaps more strategic in the type of specializations that we focus on. But there's a lot of dialogue going on also with the university, although they're not part of the MFSAC yet. But there is a lot of discussion and scope for discussion. But it's not just the university, it's the whole education system in a way. I think the awareness is there. The fact that there's a Vision 2050, there's some MFSAC strategy that are highlighting more and more the niche areas that will be given more and more attention going forward, will help the country in general, will help students, career advisors. So I guess that's the only way to go. I mean, more specialization, more research-based and focused research-based studies and alignment with the key sectors that we'd like to promote.
One last question. Because I lecture at the university, and what I see over the years is that there are more, at least in finance, more foreigners than there are Maltese. So we're getting a lot of foreigners to Malta to actually study.
Well,
what are we doing to retain those foreigners in Malta to actually work in the workforce? So we're teaching them, and then we're letting them go back. So there should be an incentive to actually keep them in the market.
Again, yes, retention is important. The more scope you give people to continue developing their own careers, the better, because they won't move, I guess. But we have to accept the fact there's a lot of mobility, especially within the EU. And we, even as a regulator, benefit a lot from the expats who work with us and do stay for longer periods, and not coming today and leaving tomorrow. They really give a good and solid contribution in a continuous basis. We don't have that much turnover as an organization. And I guess that's what everyone has to do. We need to nurture the local talent. We need to channel them into specialization and give them opportunities in that regard. And I think it ties in with the fact that we want to add value to the service that we're providing at the moment.
I'm going to pass the mic, but I'm just going to say some expats have stayed for 20 years. Couldn't get rid of me. Yes, Mike.
I think this is a conversation which happens across the world in financial centres. What's the balance between investing in the local university system to develop homegrown talent and attracting international talent into the economy and putting all that together and making it fit. And the reality is that you can't be an international financial centre without international people. In London, not just in finance, but generally, 25% of our workforce was born in a different country. That is something that adds to London in terms of its feeling like a cosmopolitan international centre. So there's real benefit to having that mix of nationality. But at the same time, the one thing I see in Malta, which is really good, is the national conversation that's happening about what is our strategy, what's the vision for the future, where are we going to put our resources, whether that's into finance or manufacturing or energy or whatever it is, so that the university sector and business can work together to build the workforce that you need for the future. And that national conversation, I think, is really important.
I guess the converse is also true, that we can tap resources in other jurisdictions to bring them here. So let's be careful not to be too insular about it. We're already an island, and that the local talent is not the only talent available out there. Let's enhance the local talent, fine, but not to the exclusion of saying that because it's the local talent, it's better than bringing in resources from other parts of the EU or other parts of the world. Because they will have the tendency of becoming more and more insular. We need to get out there.
I mean, just another statistic to build on Mike's in financial services. Within fintech, 50% of fintech founders in the UK were not born in the UK. And most of those came to study and stayed. But naturally, they obviously are hiring a huge amount of talent from the UK as a result of their businesses being based there. So I think I totally agree that we, bringing that mix of talent in and attract them to stay is really important. I think the challenge with universities now for me is how do you evolve the courses to try to work out what's needed in the future. So I remember when my daughter was 11 and I'm going around schools trying to find something that does coding, computer science, which she hates, by the way. Here we are 6 years on, she just goes into ChatGPT. She doesn't need to code or computer science. And in fact, computer science grads are really struggling to find jobs now coming out of university because people are replacing those jobs with AI. So I think trying to bring that mix of talent and also sort of degree-leveled apprenticeships or just straight apprenticeships into the workplace is also really important because I think that helps to bring that mix of talent and allow you to evolve those those grads or those students post-18. It's not just about going to get a degree because you're learning now in the workplace and learning very fast.
If I may just give one example, look at what's happened in the iGaming industry, in the cluster that has been, and this is what you were saying before, the creation of the cluster, the mobility between different companies, and the introduction of a mix of foreign people with the locals. And I think that is a good base to take into financial services going forward.
I'm going to be devil's advocate just for a second. Because as a foreigner who's been here 20 years and 1 year proudly Maltese, I'm very proud to be Maltese now, I can tell you as a foreigner, it's not always as easy as it's portrayed to be. And Malta does have a genuine infrastructure challenge. When I came, there were 12,500 foreigners, and now there is, 130,000 foreigners. So to be able to embrace foreigners within our country, there's going to be that sort of give and take. We have to change our attitude. If we want to be the very best at whatever given area of financial services and international, as Mike mentioned there, we have to embrace that international element and not be adverse to it. And you just mentioned the iGaming industry, and I'm going to be very honest. iGaming industry is quite often regarded as that industry and not seen to bring in the foreigners and welcome them with the same levels of standard of living with regards to open banking accounts, having credit, having ease of services, the same level of rent, so on. I'm speaking from a very personal experience. We have to change our attitude. You can't have both. Am I right?
We need to stop being insular.
Okay. I'm going to stay with you for probably what's going to be our last question, and I'm going to take one more question from the floor. Oh, I feel really bad. There's a gentleman with his hand up. Okay, let's go with that.
Being insular, because I'm from a private equity background. I'm a private equity fund manager. And if I compare Malta as a place to set up compared to Luxembourg and Ireland, Ireland has advantage. It's quite a big island. There's 5 million or so Irish. So you've got a labour pool there. So it's quite easy. Luxembourg is nested between Germany and France. So you've got all these French and Germans who commute for the day and can come and work. And Malta has this objective problem that they're kind of an island in the middle of nowhere. So, when you hear about Malta, you hear about people complaining it's overpopulated, and then you hear about attracting talent, which seems a bit of a schizophrenic thing. There's too many people. So I was thinking about how to solve that. And perhaps one idea, because I'm identifying a problem, I'd love you to comment on it, but I always like to try and come up with a solution. Perhaps the idea could be like a Phoenician solution, where you set up a colony in Pozzolo, where that new ferry goes to, and put in the lower level white collar jobs and do a deal with a comuna there, and then sort of have a colony there to solve partly the problem of overpopulation.
I think we'd all love a little trip to Pozzolo. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to let that one sit for a second because we have another question over here. Do we have another question over here? Okay.
Right. Keaton Ajos, MCAST. On the point of education, I think it's very crucial that we focus on all of our institutions. So we're a group of financial services students. Whilst it's good to focus on the education at the schooling level, I think it is equally as crucial that we focus on the education at the workplace level. Exactly. And it could be indicative that we are bringing in a lot of expat workforce because they are talent ready to go, rather than younger people who could be offering talent but still need to be trained up. I think it's very crucial that we give them time and to actually give space for that talent to be built up. I'm going to pass it to my colleague as well because he does have a question on this.
Okay, question because we're just short of time.
Yeah, sorry, one last question. Sven Fabri from MCAST. To add to what he said, my question is, when businesses take on students or interns, how do you think they can best plan their experience so that there is time to properly monitor them rather than just assigning them to routine tasks, obviously? Because from our experience, up till now, yes, there is somewhat a plan for the student, but obviously the student is placed there to get the job done, obviously, and we feel like there isn't a proper way yet. There's a plan actually seen that for the student.
Thank you very much for your question. Do you have any comments?
Well, I think it's also about patience, and what I, at my age, considers to be patience is not the same concept as younger people consider patience to be. So there must be patience even on the part of the students. Now, it's a matter of mentorship. It's a matter of being assigned to internship programs that have the ability to mentor people rather than just giving them the technical ability. It's turning, look, any internship, to my mind, is rendering a graduate into a professional and giving to that intern not just the technical knowledge, but also the ability to think like a professional. Any internship program that does not do that needs to change.
Can I also, I'm just going to thank you very much for that answer, and I'm also just going to say one thing. I really suggest to any student, seek out a mentor. Go and find someone in your industry that can mentor you. Be proactive about that. I know that has made a massive difference to my career when I sought out someone who could guide me. So be proactive rather than just waiting for it to come to you. We have, sorry, did you want to?
Coming back to MCAST, I guess that it's an excellent institution for carrying out applied research and contributing that research to industry as well. So I think if one can find the right formula, I think students coming out of MCAS can themselves act as a pull for more investment to come, because investors will seek that kind of talent.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. We have, I'm going to say 7 minutes. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to not take any more questions from the floor because I have one big whopping question for Louis, and I'm going to ask my panel to jump in with very short, punchy answers. I guess the million-dollar question, million-euro question, from a legal and governance standpoint, what does Malta need to do to reinforce its reputation as a high-quality, rules-based jurisdiction?
And you honestly expect me to...
I do. Well, yes, I'm sorry about that.
Okay, I think we have the platform, the framework is there. And now from a credibility perspective, both legal and governance, we need to demonstrate it works. And we need to demonstrate that by becoming more sophisticated in the way we apply our regulation and the way we enforce it. And that requires more judgment to be made, a higher level of sophisticated judgment to be made. What we can't do, and I think we need to avoid the extreme poles here, one is regulatory overreach. Regulation is not the answer to all of our problems. We tend to think that when crisis hit, the immediate instinctive knee-jerk reaction is more regulation. I think we need to avoid regulatory overreach. It stifles legitimate business. It stifles and it sends people away from the jurisdiction. The other pole is we cannot have under-regulation or under-enforcement of regulation where the bad actors still act because that has a huge impact on the credibility of the jurisdiction itself. So what comes through is what I would call proportionate regulation. And by proportionate here, I mean finding the balance between and distinguishing fundamentally between what are serious breaches, what are systemic, what creates the systemic breach, and therefore where we need to have swift and visibly action being taken. And let's not make such a big fuss about technical infractions, about technical non-compliance. Where does that lead? That leads to the predictability on the part of operators to understand where should I put my compliance efforts, where and how should I calibrate my compliance efforts to go from the higher risk activity and putting more effort there than on the minor ones.
Brilliant. Michael, I'm going to ask you for a 1-minute answer before I come to our other guests.
Nothing is without risk. There's a lot of innovation going on. So the important thing is for the regulators to understand the business in the first place more than ever before, I think.
Less than a minute. Fantastic. Mike, do you have I'm going to afford you 1.5 minutes.
There's something here, I think, about telling the story. As I was here yesterday, just talking to people and saying, well, why are you in Malta? And people gave various answers about climate and the ease of attracting an international workforce, which speaks a number of languages, the fact that the regulators are easy to talk to. So there's a story here which you can tell about Malta as a place to do business. And that is one of the ways in which you just make sure that people understand and hear that message that actually when I'm thinking about where to set up a business or where to expand, Malta should be on my list. So there's something about telling a clear story about we're open for business, it's easy to come and do business here, you can recruit the people you need, and you can also live in a very nice place. What's not to like about that story? But you've got to get that story told and backed up by people who can be ambassadors for Malta, who have made that journey and have based themselves here. Fantastic answer.
Charlotte, you had the first word. I'm going to give you the last word.
I mean, I think for regulation, don't regulate in isolation. It's so important to have everyone around the table. As I always say in the UK, if you have 20 people, the right 20 people, you will find a way through. And I've been very impressed by the working groups and the work of the strategy and the vision here in Malta. But it's so important. And I think that's where we saw the shift change in the UK, is when we had the regulators at the same table as the founders, at the same table as officials in government, and then presenting that to ministers just to check the box or give them a great idea. If you try to do it on your own, it doesn't work. And that's what we've seen in the US. It's been quite a different pull. Industry doesn't go and bounce ideas off regulators in the US. You go in with a fully formed idea of what you want to achieve. So I think that's incredibly important. And on the global stage, keep doing what Malta's doing. And what Joseph's done, how I met Joseph a few years ago, is going out to tell that story of what Malta's about, and building those relationships is so important. When you are a small island, you may have the best environment here for regulation, for growth, for fintech, but it's okay, but you've got to go and tell someone about it. So don't be too British. Go and tell people the story, and you'll be amazed, sort of what that can pay back.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, I do believe that was a fantastic discussion. I'm going to encourage you, if you didn't get to ask your questions, do find these folk during the lunchtime or during a coffee break. Come and ask them their questions, connect with them, and make sure that you have your answers as we head forwards for the next however many years. Ladies and gentlemen, please join with me in a round of applause. Thank you very, very much indeed. And also thank you so much to the questions from the floor, which were absolutely brilliant. All right, ladies and gentlemen,